I was born in Salford. My father's side of the family is agricultural labourer from Ireland. My mother's side of the family is very, very much musical orientated. They came from Kent. When I was 6 months old, we moved to Flixton, which is a small suburb of Greater Manchester, where I went to St Michael's Church School in Flixton, which I really, really loved. Of course, we were attached to the church, so we used to go across to the church as well, and I used to look at the beautiful stained windows. Come 11, I was very fortunate. I passed the 11 plus somehow. I went to Ermston Girls Grammar School, which again I really, really enjoyed. I did languages to A level. And then I attained a place at the Rose Bruford College of Speech and Drama in London, which is a completely different world from 1969 Manchester to go to 1969 London. The arty group, the sex and drugs and rock and roll people. So I was very, very withdrawn for the first 6 months in case I made a faux pas. Then I went on to the University of Kent at Canterbury because you could miss out the foundation year if you'd done a college course. So I did 2 years there and got my BA. I went straight into theatre, which is where I met my husband, Michael. And I continued doing bits and pieces of theatre for a long time, but culminating in the BBC World Service drama department in Bush House in London, which I loved that job. But unfortunately then my parents and my grandmother, all of whom were living with me or near to me, became very seriously ill, and I knew that it was time to come home because I was needed, and I'm really glad that I did, because I could be with all of them until the end, which was absolutely what I wanted to do. So I'm now teaching. I teach now adults with learning difficulties. I started teaching profound and multiple individuals, and I always had the people in the school who had the most life-limiting conditions, which again I really enjoy. But now I've got this fabulous group of people with learning difficulties, and we're doing a play for Christmas. We did one for Halloween, and it's going to be absolutely wonderful. And everybody wants to do a song and a poem and some jokes at the end as well. And we've got 2 weeks to do it in, which is not quite the idea, but it'll be wonderful. Right, I think that cluttering and hoarding is a symptom of other things going on in your life. I don't think anybody goes out to have that sort of problem. And once you have that problem, it's extremely difficult to solve, because in my case, I was very, very fortunate. I was able to throw money at the problem. I was able to employ professionals. I was able to have the house redecorated, because obviously I couldn't have done it myself whatsoever. And my friends would have helped me, but that would have been just too emotional. Couldn't do that. So my husband became ill in 1992, and when he died in 2017, the house was a complete chaotic mess, and that was absolutely not his fault whatsoever. Neither of us were capable of going out to buy a pint of milk without coming back with armfuls of books and bits and pieces from the charity shops. So everything got stacked up, projects were started, not finished, put in another room. Michael was ill for all those years, and I was always working full time. So when he died, the house, the garden, a small industrial unit were all absolutely rammed with stuff. Some of which I was able to get to professional people, like all his boating books went down to Brighton, lovely. All his tools went to an ancient tool department somewhere, so that was sorted. But I was still full of everything. So I just Googled decluttering Manchester. And the first lady who phoned up, I explained the circumstances. She said, no, I'm not going to do it. It's too early. You're still grieving. You'll get rid of things that you really wanted to keep. Lovely. Okay, I understood that reasoning. The second lady who phoned up, when I explained, I think I had 5 cats at this point. There was fur everywhere because I couldn't clean, because there was no room to clean. She said, well, I can't do that because, I'm allergic to cats. Absolutely fine. So the third lady who phoned up, which was Lindsay, was absolutely wonderful. We shared a similar sense of humour, so we could laugh about it. We just had 3 piles. Keep only if it's precious, if it's useful, if it's beautiful, and you can't do without it, or it's sentimental value. get rid of if it's rubbish. And I had a lovely friend called Steve with a big vehicle who used to take it to the tip on a regular basis. And then charity shop. And Lindsay had a big estate car, so she would take it off to one of the charities was called Men in Sheds. I don't know whether you've come across that. And all Michael's tools, other tools and equipment could go there because it's apparently men won't speak to each other like women will. They bottle everything up. Whereas if they're in a shed, sort of surrounded by other blokes doing their project, they will then open up. So that's what we did. We had lots and lots of sessions, and it is emotional. It is difficult. You have to be quite calm and professional, and which she helped me with that because there wasn't the emotional attachment. We could have a laugh about it. And then you have to have a certain amount of commitment. You have to have money, unfortunately, in my case. But I think that there are solutions for other people who are perhaps more vulnerable than I am and need more help than I did and perhaps do not have the resources. I think there is help out there, but I was very fortunate I could do it my way. Oh, that's a good question. Well, I'm still feeling it now. Grief doesn't go away, Brendan. But you have to identify the problem, take a step back, realise you need to take certain steps to solve the problem, and identify them and seek professional help. And that's quite a challenging thing to do when you're not feeling particularly strong within yourself. But you've either got to do it or you're going to drown in all this stuff. And it gets to the point where you just cannot do it yourself, because in my case, I'm not strong enough. I'm not emotionally strong enough in that situation. And I'm not physically strong enough. And I don't have the skills to move tons and tons and tons of stuff, recarpet, decorate, tile, and clean. So I had to accept help. And I was very, very fortunate that I had so many kind, wonderful people to help me who were not even friends. They were professional people, but they empathised and sorted me out. Yes, she was a very calm person. She listened to the narrative of why I'd got to that position, and she explained that there are various different causes for getting into that situation. I think Michael and I fell into the cause of we were both professionals, we loved books, we loved ornaments, and in sort of acquiring things, we were sort of not addressing the problem that he was going to die. So she was very friendly, outgoing. We had the same sense of humour. We found one or two things that were a little bit risque and had a good old cackle about that because, we're all young once, aren't we? And she was prepared to come back time after time after time because she had a certain time limit, physically, emotionally, and mentally that she would not go beyond. I think we did like 2 or 3 hour sessions at a time. So it took lots of sessions for her to come back and lots of sessions for me to call in Steve to get rid of the stuff to the tip. So we had to coordinate our times as well. But she was excellent at that. Can't praise her highly enough. And we are still in touch now, obviously. Otherwise, we wouldn't be together in this room, would we? The barriers that I perceive are personality. You've got to be a strong person. People are very fearful. People are embarrassed. People are ashamed. People don't want other people to come to their house whatsoever. Like now I can have parties. I have parties all the time. But in that situation, I certainly could not have parties. There's barriers, don't know where to turn. Barriers, you can't afford it. Barriers that services have been withdrawn. There's so much austerity. And just lack of will, if you see what I mean. It's easier just to hide away and just pretend it's not happening. How am I today? Right. I'm very lucky. I've got lots of friends and I have lots of activities and I do exercises and I join lots of groups because that's supposed to be so good for your mental health. I've just completed 10 weeks of counselling because the wheels did fall off and they always will. And I've studied a lot of actual models of grief on the laptop because it actually shows pictorially all these different models and it's really interesting. The one I take for me is a picture of a jar that's your life. Inside the jar there's a circle of grief and there's lots of different jars with these circles in. The circle, the grief, stays the same, but the jar gets bigger round the circle of grief. So your life does start to expand in a certain way, and I like that model. The other model I like is where you were, where you now are, and it's lots of squiggly lines because it comes and it goes and it comes and it goes, and there's no solution, but you learn to live with it. Just get used to it being awful. I've got a swing seat at the back.
I saw, yeah.
And my neighbour, who was then 93, sat on it, not realising it was a swing seat. She goes flying up in the air, skirts all over, she's cackling with laughter.